masterclass. Again, sorry for some minor technical issue. It's a bit pity, so that actually the deck which I will present, so it will not be perfect, but anyway, I don't think the deck is important, but the presentation itself. So why I'm here today, it's about to deliver the presentation, which is a presentation in essence about my company, Mondelēz International, and on the topic of key success factors for CPG company in the current environment. So, sharing the screen. Off we go. Can you see it? Guys on the line, can you see the deck?
Yes.
Okay. Good. So basically, as I said, the topic for today is the key success factor for the global CPG company in the current volatile reality, exemplified by my company, where I work, as Mondelēz International. So, who we are? Our purpose and mission is basically to provide snacks to people. So, how we call it, we empower people to snack right. It's a global company with a turnover of about $30 million, which is presented globally across majority of the markets. Our market, as we shaped it for ourselves, is a snacking market. So I think we have heritage businesses like chocolate. So previously, which we refer to our business as confectionery or biscuits. But since a few years, we actually zoomed and we redefined our market. So we believe that we play in snacking. And I will talk in future, what snacking means and how big is the snacking market. So basically, that's our purpose, to empower people to snack right, meaning provide the right snack in the right moment to any consumer in the world. We basically put our missions, which is lead the future of snacking, offering, like I said, the right snack for the right moment, made, that's also very important, made in the right way. A couple of words about myself. I work in finance. I'm VP Finance for Eastern Europe business unit. Total business of Mondelēz International is split in 13 business units. We operate on a geographical model, geographical principle. So we don't run businesses on a category model like some CPG companies do. We rather have responsibility for the business and responsibility for P&L and our product portfolio based on geographical principle. So business unit is a territory a bit bigger than a country, which typically includes few markets. So Eastern Europe is anchored to Russia, which is the biggest market, plus we have Turkey, Central Asia, Caucasus. We used to have Ukraine as part of our business unit, which is now operating as a separate, basically standalone business. So I shaped the topic today talking about CPG company in the current turbulent environment. So sorry for the phones, but talking about last few years, the first thing which comes to the mind is turbulence. Because from the beginning of 2020, we operate in a continuous turbulence, a special situation regime in a way. So starting from 2020, back in January, February, when we first heard about COVID, we didn't know what to expect, right? So, but situation evolved quite fast and considerably. So I don't have to explain what COVID means, right? So we all experienced it. What it meant for CPG and for our business, actually it was we had two sides. First, of course, it was painful because it was a big business interruption. So our supply chains were erupted. We experienced difficulties in bringing people to the office, making organization to work on on a remote basis. We operate more than 200 plants across the globe. And one thing is to run the business based on the home office. Another thing is to run production plant, which assumes people coming and working on the line, right? So and be physically present. So that was a big agenda, big interruption to some kind. However, it had a flip side. Actually, COVID was not bad for us as a snacking company, because some of the categories and many of the well-known brands actually were pretty much important to consumers who were in distress. So, for example, our sales of sweet biscuits went up considerably across the globe, right? So, because it was a big shift in the paradigm of consumption. Many consumers who were locked at homes, who were visited less HoReCas and away from home, so they chose and they voted for the well-known brands and familiar product concepts. So sweet biscuits, good. Chocolate tablets, also good. Refreshment categories, where we also strong. So we play in gum and candy, really bad, right? So the social distancing impacted us very bad. So, but I think it's not about, so the COVID is not about the pluses or minuses of the COVID, right? So, but the COVID brought us a very important lesson that something which is difficult to imagine, something which is very difficult to plan, may happen all of a sudden. It may happen, in few weeks. And in few weeks, you have to rethink the entire supply chain. You have to send hundreds of thousands of people to work from home. And at the same time, you have to serve the change. You have to serve the changing distribution channel. So because the e-commerce quadrupled or grew 10 times in some of the markets. At the same time, hypermarkets declined. So something very, what is commonly known as a black swan, right? So, but something which was theoretical, hypothetical 3 years ago, came in 2020, and I think it learned us that for the future we have to be ready. Any business has to be ready for something which is difficult to foresee, impossible to plan, however, which may come and change the life just like this. And after COVID, again, I don't have to read you a lecture on what's happening in the world now. Yeah? Many things which are happening in the world are somehow the post-reaction or post-COVID reality, right? So, but COVID was not the major reason of the things which are happening today. COVID was rather a catalyst or a trigger which just released some of the things which were accumulating for quite a long time in the economy. Inflation. What is inflation? For us today, we produce food. We are a food company in the end of the day, right? So in the market of food, we're responsible for snacking. Food in general is quite energy and raw material consuming business. In order to produce food, we have to consume a lot of soft commodities. We have to buy a lot of ingredients. We employ a lot of energy. We involve a lot of logistics and distribution into this. So our supply chain is rather complex. The reality of today is that both supply chain was distorted. It is recovering now, but the distortion in supply chain was huge. So the cost of a shipping container, went up 15 times. Because all of a sudden, due to COVID, all of the containers were locked in one part of the world, whilst they were needed in a different part of the world. So, and there are many stories of this kind, right? So, but the situation is the following. These are other way, supply chain was impacted all across the globe. And again, something which has to be reliable, mathematically, right, something which should be easy to plan, things like supply chain, right? So supply chain is based on where is the demand, where do you produce, what is the lead time of the shipment from your supplier to your plant, something which is, hard mathematics, which can, and nobody could imagine that this thing can be distorted again by this, to this extent and this magnitude. Inflation. What is inflation in Russia these days? Sorry. Can somebody say? Because there is a lot of talk about inflation. So what is inflation here in this market? It's I was told you're working and you're studying in the business, right? So business is talking about inflation. What is inflation in Russia?
15%.
Say it again?
15%.
I think low, right? So what they say is that the annual inflation is slowing down. Yes, it reached 17–18% in April. We thought it was bad. Now it's declining, right? So, and this is Russia, where we have the history of inflation, although in the last, I think, maybe decade, we were used to operate with a low inflation. But now, let me ask you a different question. Central Europe, imagine markets like Hungary, Poland. What is the inflation there? What do you think?
10%.
Say it again?
10%.
I would say 18 to 20.
Yeah, it is higher than in Russia because they are the United regions and the economy is weaker than in, for example.
Well, there are many reasons why it is higher, right? So, and this is consumer inflation, right? So it means that consumers, whilst the salary increases in these markets, are far away from being 18%, right? So, do you have an idea what is the producer price inflation? So, so-called PPI. You know, PPI, it's the inflation of the input materials, right? So something which is not sold in the retail, something which is bought on a business-to-business market, right? Soft commodities, energy, labor, transportation services. It is what businesses procure from other businesses. Any idea of the producer inflation? In Germany, 40%, 40. PPI inflation in Turkey is 150%. CPI is 100% respectively. You know, in the world, if something is growing, you know, in one side, it has an impact on the total system. So if producer inflation is 150% in some of the markets, 40 in Europe, in the end of the day, either consumers will have to pay for it, because companies like us, who are procuring now input materials and producing finished goods, either we will have to increase our prices so that consumers will pay, or we will have to adjust our margins. In the end of the day, I tell you, it's rather the first. So basically, the inflation wave which world has entered it will last for another couple of years. Again, something which was not top of the mind idea even 3–4 years ago. Supply chain crisis, talked about this, and due to supply chain crisis, well, actually current inflation is the reason of the supply chain crises, but not only, it's also the impact of a lot of governmental money which was injected into the economies during the COVID. It is the consequence of a long-term low interest rate policies. So now actually the world is adjusting back to normality, but this adjustment is not normal. Rising interest rates. So what is the minimum interest rate in the world? Say interest rate on US treasuries. It's 4%. It used to be 0.25. What is 0.25 interest rate? It means that the corporations like us could borrow at 1%. 1% is nothing, which means money for free. Which means we could think about any crazy idea. You know, if you're a blue chip corporation, you have access to the debt market, basically you can borrow at 1%. Okay, 1.3% if it matters to somebody, right? Now the lowest interest rate is 4%. So it means that the long-term debt for companies like us with $30 billion revenue is in the range of 5%, 5 to 6, because the spreads are also high. What does it mean? It means that the money is not for free. It means that people are learning back that money has the value, intrinsic cost of money, right? So But it's painful. It means that no more cheap mortgages in the developed markets, completely different cost of living, different cost to refinance the debt, again, which means impact on consumption. Political military crisis. I want to stay politically correct, I will not comment on this, but if you just rotate the globe, it will be difficult to find a safe place, I think, on the planet, due to different reasons, but it's a consequence of the great policy of many policymakers around the globe in the last 20 years. All of this impacts whom?
Us.
Us, yes. Because in the end of the day, based on my career in business, who pays in the end of the value chain? Consumer. So what last 2-3 years taught us is that from the world of global trends, stability, cheap credit, access to the money market, growth in the spending, and building consumer confidence, we're entering actually an interesting period where things are unexpected, unpredictable, unplanned, volatile, risky, more expensive, and unsafe. What does it mean? Shall we close the shop? And what should help companies like us? We're a big company, right? So we operated in one world, now we found ourselves in a different world. What do you think, should companies like us do in this environment?
Adapt.
What does it mean to adapt?
Have a good risk management.
Well, yeah, not bad. Yes?
Maybe to reduce costs.
We have to reduce costs, but well, good idea. Look, I'm provoking you because there is no answer, right? So there is no simple answer. But I'm provoking you to think longer term. Because if I think about this and I keep on looking at this slide, I get more and more depressed. And my mind is getting occupied by risk management. I have to price in Poland. I have to contract cheaper container company, right? I have to reconsider my approach to quality. I have to reformulate all the products. We put too much chocolate into our chocolate, right? So let us put less cocoa in our chocolate, right? Because it will be cheaper, right? So this is a swirl. The turbulence and unrest is a dangerous swirl for big businesses as well as also for the small businesses, right? So I think what any business requires today is a balanced approach. Well, first of all, any business requires what? A strategy, right? So and today I'm going to talk about strategy. So I promise you, I will not scare you any longer, and I will not talk more about inflation. Maybe I will mention inflation a couple of times, but it's not the main topic of today, right? What I wanted to say to you is that in any environment, turbulent or safe, you need a strategy. But then the risk of shaping a strategy or changing a strategy driven by turbulence is that basically the risk management and turbulence and risks will play the major part and will get the major piece of mind. And that can distort the business from seeing a bigger picture. Because, everything in the world is cyclical. These 2-3 years we are experiencing are not easy, and they will not be easy for another 2 years. But world is cyclical. And this is I think it's a great experience and a great opportunity to revisit some of the values and be prepared for a different cycle. Because there will be a cycle of growth, there will be a cycle of prosperity, there will be a cycle of basically a lower interest rate and a lower inflation. So that's why a company like us, we decided to look longer term, and while we're managing this turbulence, we are very clear and we are driven by our strategy. So, what is in the heart of our strategy? What do you think? So, we are a CPG company. we want to empower people to snack right, which means that we have to provide the best snacks. Say it again?
Supply chains.
Supply chain. Okay. Any other idea? What is our business? What do you think? What do we sell? What do we sell?
Happiness. Sleep.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we sell moments to our consumers, right? Yes, we sell food. Yes, we sell food, so we have to focus on supply chain, and our cost should be the best in the industry. This can be the strategy. And of course, it should be part of the strategy. But if we make a step back and put a marketing, hat.
Good mood.
Good mood. Yes, yes, yes. Well, in the heart of our strategy is actually you. It's a consumer. For a big company working in the current world, what we believe, the most important thing is to have you in the core of our strategy. Because if we don't have you in the core of our strategy, if we put product in the core of our strategy, or supply chain, or container, or cost, or whatever in the heart of the strategy, we may lose track of what you want, and you may walk away from us. And the thing is that, like 10, 20 years, the speed of you walking and choosing was rather low, right? So it was easier to follow the consumer. However, you guys are going to leave with a speed of life like 2 or 3 times higher than the previous generations, right? So I think I'm talking to majority Zs here. Do you know about Generation Z, right? So I think you are the representatives. There are some Ys, I think. And I think, well, the X's and baby boomers, right? So we followed one life pattern and we had one set of preferences. And I think the way we were making our choices and the way we were choosing the products, the habits, the consumption patterns, the speed of this, the change was 1. Now the speed is times 10. So if we don't follow you, we will lose track. So therefore we put consumer in the heart. What do we want? We want by 2030 to become the leader of the total snacks market. So the snacks market is rather big. So it's a market of about $20 trillion. And what is also important is that everybody snacks. So out of 8 billion people, there is not a single person who doesn't snack. By snacking, we define any meal, any consumption of meal in between the major meals. But everything is a bit, subjective and relevant, right? So what is a major meal? What is not a major meal? So anyway, so everybody snacks. This market is big. Like I said, it is reaching $20 trillion. It is growing. Why is it growing? Well, because population is growing. And within this population, the habits are changing. And people are snacking more and more. So therefore, we want to become the global snacks leader. From the company of $30 billion today, we want to become a company of $50, $60 billion by the year of 2030. How do we want to be? How do we want to be there? Because we want to win in 3 distinctive categories, which is chocolate, biscuits, sweet biscuits and savory biscuits, and baked snacks. Baked snacks are like cakes, croissants, and this kind of pastries, in other words. And our strategy is based on 4 pillars, and I will talk about them. So, how do we think? How do we look at growth? What do we do to perfect in execution? What kind of culture we need to have within our company? And then how do we treat sustainability agenda? So, growth. This is very ugly slide, sorry for this, but it should have been drawn in a better fonts, but we have some strange, I think we have some strange codes for the fonts. That's why this computer is recognizing it in a bit strange way. So, how shall we grow in the current world? I truly believe that any CPG company should focus on the consumer. So, and should become the consumer-centric. Because I know what it is not to become a consumer-centric. I'm in finance, you know. I'm the last person in the company who cares about you. Because I need to care about P&L, I need to care about working capital, which should be negative, ideally, the ROI, the highest ROI, lowest cost of debt, and so on. So I hear a lot of bullshitting about what is needed to our consumers, you know, how great should be our advertising, you know, that we need this NPD, this new product, because without this new product, nothing will fly. So I hear a lot of stories, right? So I should be probably one of few people the most pessimistic about what is needed to this consumer. You know, who cares about consumer, right? So we are big, we advertise, we produce the goods, we put them on the shelves, so we know better what you want. And I think it's shifting this paradigm, because many companies operate in the way which I just grotesquely described, right? So many companies think that they own the market, that they know what is needed to consumers. They know what to put on the shelves, right? And they do. But you guys and another 8 billion consumers very often demonstrate that actually you want something else. Not what big companies put on the shelves, advertise, and sometimes you have some crazy ideas. You have 50 million likes in some of the digital platforms of something which we have no idea about. So basically putting consumer in the center of everything is very important. What it means to understand who you are. It means to understand that actually in 10 years we will be selling to majority to you. We will not be selling to mom and pops. We will be selling to you. It will be primarily Gen Zs, the people who grew with, who grew in digital environment. We don't know how this digital environment will look in 8 years. It may be completely different, because the lifespan of novelties now is what, 6 months, 9 months, right? Something which was super popular 6 months, maybe not relevant any longer. So that speed of change is very high. Well-being. Well-being is important, because people are more and more concerned about what they actually consume, especially if you're in a sensitive market like us, because we produce something which you put inside of your bodies, right? So, and all basically researchers, they say that actually the younger generation of consumers, they are more and more cautious, they are more and more careful, they study more about the nutrition, about the food in general, what it does to their bodies, what it does to different processes. So this is a big trend which is difficult to not to follow. Urban, it's a trend around the globe. There is a trend of growing urban population. So it's not only the people moving from the smaller cities and villages into the cities. No, it is the era of basically concentration of smaller cities into the bigger agglomeration, and the migration from people into the bigger cities. So we are entering, and this is unavoidable, the entire world is moving to more and more agglomeration. There was a thinking that due to COVID, people will like to live in the nature, and everybody will work remotely, but it is not. We don't think that it will change the trend. So even social distancing of the last 2 years, COVID, it will not break the trend of bigger agglomerations and creation of the bigger urban megapolises and of people moving to the bigger and more dense places. Socially responsible, another big trend, because it comes along with well-being. people are, and consumers in general, they are becoming more and more socially responsible in terms of what they consume, how it is produced, which labor is used, what raw and pack materials are used, in which conditions the production is run, what company is doing, you know, as a part of social agenda. So this is becoming more and more of a trend. It may be maybe not the leading one, right? So, but more and more consumer decisions will be driven by this. So, consumer-centric, right? We need to think about these people, what they want, how they live, and it's an interesting dilemma because we don't want to be passive, right? So, we want to be active. We want to create the products which are relevant, right? So, but we don't. But it's not that we have to ignore absolutely the trends, the consumer trends. I think they have to go in parallel. We have to follow the consumer trends, and of course we have to influence them. Focus on core. We are not a company of one brand. Mondelēz has many brands. You know, different to Coke, Coca-Cola, or some other brand, or some other companies who have the basically heritage and luxury of having multi-billion-dollar brands. We operate a big portfolio. You know, even our biggest brands, they're not so big in terms of turnover. Like Oreo, #1 biscuits brands in the world, it is just a $4 billion brand, you know, in terms of the annual revenue. Is it big? Yes, but it's not, you know, in the list of the top 20, for example, right? So we have a big scattered portfolio. We also operate across all the markets and geographies. How to win, you know, how to become the most successful? One of the simple rules is to have focus in whatever we do. So, which means that in our strategy, we want to stay focused. We want to stay focused on our major brands, and we're going to invest in our major brands. And we want to get focused on the major markets where the return is the highest and the fastest, which is kind of obvious thing, right? So you know about the BCG matrix and distortion rules, right? So it's obvious, but not always followed, right? So it's not easy to make a big company to follow the simple principles of focusing on what matters, the famous 80-20 principle, right? So focus 80% of resources on what matters, right? So because otherwise you can be drained by multiple priorities. So focus. Media investments. We believe in media investments. We believe in classical marketing tools like communication to consumers. Price promotion is good. Best-in-class point-of-sale material display is good. Consumer communication, you know, buy our product and get potentially, you know, one product free or a trip to somewhere is good. But the best marketing tool is the equity of the brand. We are not selling chocolate or tablets. There are many chocolate tablets or Oreo cookies, right? We are selling the moments of joy, like we say. Because basically, it's not only the nutritional value or the sweetness or a crunchiness we're selling, right? We are blending it with the experience of consuming the brand, which is kind of very intangible thing, but the ability of selling a brand is the most beautiful thing in the business, right? You can sell a service, create a bit of added value, get your margin, but if you can sell the same thing with a higher margin, still making your consumer happier, that's the beauty of the business, right? So therefore, the best way to have our brands grow and our price points higher than the average, and therefore our margins healthy, is to have very strong brand equity. And basically the recipe for the strongest brand equity is the media investment. So we believe in the power of media investment. TV, but TV is dying? Digital. So if we think about the media investment, we think about investing in the brand. So it is never enough to talk about Milka. It is never enough to talk about Oreo. So equity, main trust, like we call it. So basically the appeal. So our copies, our communication should be always appealing. And here we come back to the consumer, right? So we have to communicate our brands in the way which is appealing the most to you guys, to your consumers. That's why I don't know how the Milka cow will look in 10, 20 years from now, but it will be and it should be the most appealing to you guys. So equity, main trust should be the main idea of the communication. So whenever we communicate, we have to first of all focus about the main brand messaging, and digital is the major tool. So in many of the markets, we are now moving more and more to digital. So for example, in Russia, the mix between the traditional TV advertising and digital advertising was 30 to 70. So we actually were mainly airing our media investments mainly in digital. And now I'm moving to digital commerce. Digital commerce or e-commerce, what is it for us and for the total business? So the percentage of retail sales in e-commerce in UK is what? What do you think? Think about overall retail, right? Food, non-food, consumer care, whatever. So what is the percentage of e-commerce in total retail in UK?
50%.
No, not yet 50, but 50. No, higher. Higher. Yeah, I think it's reaching 30. In China,
it's like more than 50.
should be close to 20. US, I think, is close to 20. So basically, the retail is moving to online. It doesn't mean that by 2030 it will all be in online, right? So, but it's moving there, which means that the growth is there. Stagnation and decline is in traditional retail, but the growth is there.
In US, it's e-commerce is less developed than UK.
Yes. Yes.
A country who has the Amazon.
Yes. Check the data.
Very strange.
Well, but it's also the big. I mean, it's also big, huh? Because US is big. So yes, Amazon is big and mighty there. But we're talking about the total retail, right? So and they consume a lot, right? So basically the highest e-com as a percentage of retail, to my knowledge again, I don't think I'm the I'm the saint, so knowing everything, but to my knowledge the highest percentages are in UK, France, China. US is also high, right? So but US is behind. So food, talking about food, even in those markets where e-commerce is high, food is lower in general, right? So because people tend to buy food, they buy it online, but they buy less food online than some other categories, right? So there are categories which are leading, in e-commerce, some of the categories which are lagging. So food is typically lagging, and snacking is lagging, compared to the general food. So today, I think in average, today we sell probably 3 to 5%, depending on the market. So it used to be 3, now I think it's closer to 5%, but 5% of our turnover is anyhow sold in e-com. We think that by 2030, in 8 years, it will exceed 20%. So basically, you can apply the growth rate. So it means that basically the growth of this business for us will be tremendous. So, and it's not only selling online, right? Being online is a great communication platform. Having your product displayed on the screen of the mobile device, not the computer any longer, right? So the major communication platform is going through mobile device, right? And it's not easy again to lead and grow in e-com when majority of transactions are done through the small screen of a mobile device, right? So you have to be in the top 3 searchers, right? Before it was important to be in top 10 searchers, now you have to be in the top 3 lines actually, so which is not easy, right, for the snacking company. But that's what we think. It will come. You guys will shop more and more online. You are already, I don't know to what extent you are responsible for your, shopping, in the households where you live, but I'm pretty sure, in few years when you will be responsible, you will have kids, whoever you want, and when you will be responsible for the shopping, I bet, I don't know, 30–40% of what you buy in retail will be online, minimum, and it's coming. But it doesn't mean that everything will be online. As I said, for us it will be maybe 20%, growing with a high speed. But other channels will stay important. So for us, we say as a strategy, we say that we have to be everywhere. So we need to have channel ubiquity. What does it mean, ubiquity? It means to be present across all the channels. You have to be presented in all the sales channels. And while being presented everywhere, we want to win with winners. What does it mean? It means that within the retail, there are different channels. Hypermarkets, supermarkets, discounters, traditional stores, mom and pop stores, impulse, whatever, kiosks, whatever. But some of the channels are growing, and some of the channels are attracting consumers, some are not. Where we have to be everywhere. So our geographical distribution, numeric distribution, should be high. But our major focus should be where the growth is. So, in a traditional retail these days, a question to you. Between hypermarket, you know what hypermarket is, right? Lenta, Asham. People used to go there. So, Lenta, Пятерочка. What do you vote for? What is more important for CPG company? Lenta or Пятерочка?
Пятерочка.
Why Пятерочка?
Because it's near my house.
Because of the, well, it's not because it's near, well, it's the most important thing for you as a consumer. It's nearby your your house, and it's important for you, therefore you vote for Пятерочка. We follow the consumer, and actually many consumers, they have this pattern. That's why Пятерочkas are growing, and Lenta is growing less, and other hypermarkets are in decline. So like Auchan, is declining year after year. But it is just a general trend on the market. Convenience stores like Пятерочkas are growing. Hypermarkets are declining. Why? Because there are hundreds of reasons. But should we understand the reasons? Of course. But what is more important, we have to prioritize what is growing, what is winning, right? So the winners of this market, so take Russia. The winners of Russia today are Пятерочка, Магнит, Красное и Белое. Funny, yes, but Красное, and who is basically leading the race in terms of the growth year over year? Красное и Белое. Consumers vote, we follow the consumers. Therefore, not to be in Красное и Белое, not to have good listing there, is a crime, is a lost value. So, and every market, they have different trends, but overall, globally, basically there is a certain pattern. The pattern is that from huge shopping malls, people vote and people are moving to convenience shopping, which are smaller supermarkets, convenience shops, which are located not far away. And if they need more assortment, what they do? They go online. So, and that's happening, that's the pattern which is happening everywhere. And at the same time, due to overall, lower consumer confidence, lack of disposable income, what also consumers like? They like lower prices. And sometimes, following the low prices, they are ready to go to the shit places, like Svetofore. If you want to see what the future of retail is, go and visit Svetofore, which is the fastest growing retail chain of Russia these days, for example. And it's not only the case of Russia, because of this and that reason, it is happening everywhere. In every market, regardless of the income level, they have their own set of worth. Discounter supermarket with the lowest possible prices, with a frightening consumer experience, but people all vote for it, and we follow them. Last thing, which should enable our growth, is what we call revenue growth management. Revenue growth management is a religion invented by consultants, which is basically a set of tools and strategies helping companies to maximize the revenue per unit, kg, kilogram, liter, whatever they are selling, whatever they measure their sales, maximizing the revenue per unit of consumption by pricing where possible, by maximizing the mix, by running more efficient promotions, and by exploring so-called price pack architecture. Price pack architecture is ability to sell the same product but in different formats so that you can offer your experience, your joy at a different price point, right? So some consumers will buy a bite of the product, others will buy a tablet, some people are interested to buy a whole bundle of several tablets, right? So this is PPA. One people buy a can of Coke, others will buy a liter, and somebody buys 2 liters or more. So this is price pack architecture. So this is the growth, consumer-centric, focused on core brands, core regions, investing a lot in the main trust communication. Oreos, Milka, major global brands. Being active and growing in digital, be presented across all the channels, but prioritizing the winning channels, and actively exploring revenue growth management, meaning pricing whenever we have the opportunity, exploring different price points to offer our products, and being efficient in promotion. Questions? Maybe enough of talking? No? Execution machine. We are selling, so our sales are $30 billion. Typical transaction, a bite, a tablet of chocolate. So average price of our product is 30-50 cents. So basically we are responsible for billions of transactions, which are happening every minute, every day. It's a big complexity, which is basically the essence of any CPG business. The difference of CPG business, I think the major characteristic of CPG business is that multi-scale of transactions, right? So because in order to win, in order to be big, you have to generate these multi-billion transactions every moment, every second, which is complexity. And again, in order to win, what we put ourselves, we have to be excellent in execution. What are the major, again, strategic priorities? Basically, to be perfect in execution, it means that our plans should work very reliably. We need to have good compliance to our recipes. We have to procure the raw and packed materials at the top class specifications. There is no way, there's no chance for any compromise on quality. So I can talk hours, this boring stuff, but this is not strategic. What I think the strategy is focusing on what matters, focusing on something which will bring you to a different level. So while doing all of this, and being involved in this multi-billion transactional business, what are our priorities? And the priorities we see for ourselves are the following. Digitalization. Digitalization of processes and activities is unavoidable, even in producing sweet biscuits, right? So digital is going across everywhere. So what does it mean, digitalization, for us? It means that in our processes, in the way how these processes are talking to each other, are interconnected, we have to digitalize as much as possible. Digitalization is efficiency, digitalization is reliability. You know, if one of the major disturbances in business, you know what is the one of the major disturbances in any business? It's a human factor, right? So basically, machines are doing transactional business much better than humans. It's obvious, right? So because we can interfere, and along with the great ideas how to improve the business, we bring immense amount of stupid ideas, you know, how to erode the efficiency of the business processes. Therefore, the less human beings are involved in execution, the better. It means that digitalization, automation was the trend of the previous decade. And having the trend of automation, we basically replaced a lot of manual labor, for example, in our major factories. So these days our factories are primarily machines, right? So from the reception of the raw and packed materials till the dispatch of the finished products, majority of the operations are automated in our plants. Now it's a different thing. Now all of this automation, they have to talk to each other. You know, ideally we need to be able to talk. Our systems need to be able to talk to the systems of our suppliers and to the system of our customers. So ideally, one system should order automatically raw and packed materials from the supplier. Then the reception should be more or less automated, because there are technologies to run warehouses without people already these days. The production can be fully automated. Then ideally, again, we need to get the order from our customer. When one system, one machine is talking to another machine, we can dispatch. In few years, a lot of dispatches will be done through the self-driving trucks. I mean, it looks like a future, but I believe in a decade, you know, there will be lots of self-driving trucks. So basically, and retailers are automating as well, right? So probably in few years there will be no people involved in these basic processes. So digitalization makes a big difference because we have to be on top of this. End-to-end supply chain, we should be customer-centric. We talked a lot about consumer. Consumer is the most important person, right? Is the one responsible to get the joy. So we have to do a lot of activities, and the responsibility of consumer just to have the satisfaction from our product. Customer is the platform. It's the platform, retail universe, where one of the most important transactions is happening. It is when our product is being purchased for the future consumption by the consumer. So that moment, you know, and that should be the center of everything. So it's not our plant, right? It's not our packaging. It's not the way we run the business, but it's the way customer runs the business. Should be the major idea. Because I'm part of many discussions. Often we want to do the things our way, and we think that Krasnaya Belaya, Tesco, Auchan, and other customers will lean forward and will accept our ways of doing things, our trucks, our size of pallets, but they will not. Simply because they have one important advantage. They face the shopper and consumer. We don't. We use them to face shopper and consumer. Therefore, customer is right. So in the business, in the deliveries, in the transactions, customer is right. When this is put in the center of supply chains, then the supply chain is ideal. Because the highest KPI of supply chain is the service level. So we measure it as a service level. Service level is measured by the compliance, our ability to comply to the order of the customer. When customer wants a product, we have to deliver it. At the moment when customer is ready to accept it in the warehouse, in exact quantity the customer ordered, with a perfect set of documents, you know, without any mistakes. That's the target. Then we can be sure that the customer will do their part of the work. They will bring the product from the warehouse to the shelf where it can be found by our shoppers and consumers. Customer-centric end-to-end supply chain. So basically our plans, the way we ship the products, it has to match this major priority. However, although customer is right, they're not perfect. They don't care what is happening. In many instances, they don't care what is happening in their shop floors. Although they are supposed to put the products on the shelves, sometimes and very often, they don't do it with the proper quality. That's why here comes again we, and we help our customers to win with shoppers in store. Who is the shopper? So we have consumer, we have customer. Who the hell is shopper?
Someone who goes to shops only, who doesn't maybe use online marketplaces.
Yeah, well, shopper is somebody who goes to the shop, yes. But is there a difference between consumer and shopper?
Yes.
There is. Who is responsible for buying food in the families in
Adults.
Russia?
Adults.
Mothers.
Okay.
So the shopper in Russia, typical shopper in Russia, is a woman of 40 years old with 1 point something kids. You know, 1 point, rounded 2 kids, a bit less. This is the shopper, right? So consumers, it's a different. Who is the consumer? Well, it's a husband who is busy with the FIFA World Cup these days, you know, and with other activities in the meantime. Kids, older people, you know, and so on. So that's the difference, right? So when we communicate, when we think about consumers, we think not only about the mother, the shopper, yeah? We need to think about the husband, we need to think about the kids, we need to think about, of course, her. But when we sell and when we serve our product in the retail, we think about shopper. So basically winning with shopper, and again, I mentioned Russia, right? So, but in different markets and in different retail channels, we have different profile of shoppers. E-commerce is the same retail channel. And the profile of the shopper in e-commerce can be different than the profile of shopper in retail. But what is the strategy? The strategy is to always match the preferences of the shopper depending on the channel we serve. Yes?
What is the difference on the gender? That's all, shopper and customer. I just heard the
No,
difference
you
in
didn't get the
gender.
idea. You didn't get the idea. The idea, the shop, this is way of life, right? So basically, around the globe, across different households, typically there is a pattern. Then one of the members of the household is responsible for retail shopping. This is the pattern. Don't ask me why. Well, this is how people, human beings, live. Right? Typically there is a pattern. Not in every family, not in every household, but it's a pattern. So everybody who lives in the household consumes. But typically one of them is responsible for majority of the retail shopping. Right? That's why we have to target the shopper. So we need to think how do we offer to her, in case of Russia, how do we offer the entire portfolio of our products, which typically she buys for her household. Fact of life, right? So it may be different. In Middle East, it's a different thing. In Middle East, again, depending on the country, it may be completely different. In Southeast Asia, the major shopper is a male with $1 per day of, or maybe 1 point something dollar per day of disposable income. So basically, yeah, it's because many many people, you know, they have the daily incomes because they work somewhere and they don't work on a monthly or weekly paycheck, right? So they earn their money basically day by day. And therefore, for food or snacking within food, they have less than $1 on a daily basis. So they go to the shop every day to buy 2 potatoes, you know, and a jar of milk. So shopper profile is different from the consumer profile. That's it. Last thing in execution is return. So it's basically a simple strategy, which again probably is there in every strategy playbook of any company. It's the highest ROI, but we mean it. Basically, every activity we do is associated with some cost, right? So, but we treat costs as investments, and we try to measure the return, and we try to maximize the return, right? So we don't say we spend money to advertise. We say we invest money in advertising, and therefore we try to measure the uplift on the sales as a result of the investment in advertising. We don't say we spend money for Salesforce. We say we invest money in Salesforce, and therefore we measure the return, if there is any. So, so basically, ideology of treating expenses as investments and therefore looking for return which is generated by this investment and maximizing this return is the strategy. Clear on this? Any questions apart from who is the shopper? No? Okay.
What's the difference?
Say again?
What's the difference between consumer and customer?
Consumer and customer.
Yeah.
Customer, we are a big producer. So for us, customer is typically a retailer because we don't sell directly. We don't have a luxury of selling directly to consumers. Why? Because it's our business model, right? So, you know, to run multi-billion transactional business, you either make this a focus, right? So that then you need to have the assets. You need to have shop floor. You need to have skills. You need to have equipment. You know, we decisively not to face directly consumer at the moment of sale. We use customers, intermediaries, retailers, as majority of the producers, right? So because it's simply different business, different investment, different return, and different complexity to run. Even in our online stores, you know, first of all, e-commerce, right? So we don't open our own internet shop. This is obsolete idea, right? So basically, it's impossible to compete with the big marketplaces, right? So when we talk e-com, we mean primarily big platforms and big marketplaces, which are customers. They are also customers to us. Culture. We have, so we employ 270,000 people globally. So it's a big group of people working for the company. When we put to ourselves a target, you know, we want to win and become the biggest snacking company. And in order to do this, we have to double the business in a decade. Without the right people, right motivation of the people, it's just impossible. So we think and we believe that culture is a glue, culture is a foundation, culture is the spirit, religion if you wish, right? So we, which unites people, which makes people basically be better and target for more, put more ambitious goals, and then happily celebrate the achievement together. So our key priorities are the following. We want to be very focused in what we do, you know, because it's a big organization. There are many people, many hierarchies, many layers of the hierarchy in the organization, and therefore, without a focus on what matters the most, there is a high risk of complexity and what we also say complicatedness. You know, different people, different managers, if they have different agenda and they are not focused in their priorities, that creates a house. Second important thing we believe is empowerment. So instead of concentrating a lot of authority on the higher level of organization, we try to push the processes and decisions down along the chain, right? So this is something what we believe on. Again, it doesn't mean that everybody can do whatever he or she wants, right? So in the organization, no. But it is about not concentrating a lot of decision-making power in one hands, and always looking for a possibility to cascade down by 1 or 2 levels the decision-making power. Connectivity. Connectivity is important. So connectivity will help people to stay together and stay as one team. You probably heard about silo mentality, you know, as one of the issues in the organizational behavior of many corporations. Silo mentality is something something which is not acceptable, so for example, in a football. I mean, now it's a FIFA World Cup, right? So we're all watching. So there is a team of 11 people. Of course, it's very important to have the star in the team. Very important to have a star in the team. Ideally, few stars in the team, right? So, but it's a team play, right? So there are 11 people on the field, and everybody has a very clear role. So without a good connectivity between them, without a good connect between them, there will be no game. And actually, very often in football and other team sports, we saw that it's not enough to have the genius in the team, right? So very often, a very average team outplays the team with stars. Why do they do it? Well, because they understand each other. How do they understand each other? How is it possible to understand each other? Well, the first step and the most important step to understand each other is to have a connection with each other. What does it mean to have a connection with each other? Well, it means to be interested in each other, to have an attitude of empathy, listening instead of talking, and acceptance. So basically, connection means to accept people the way they are, avoid discrimination, avoid any inequality, to have a culture of discussion, acceptance, and empathy. Right? So therefore, we have informal culture. So I have a jacket, but typically I don't wear a jacket during my work. We say everybody "ты" in the office. We call each other by name, and we welcome connectivity between different layers, right? So like there is nothing wrong to ask a question to president or vice president, right? So to raise the voice and to have the opinion. As a result of this, right? So we believe in these 3 things, like focus, empowerment, connectivity. We also believe in deep and diverse talents. We believe that 80% of the talent can be grown within the organization. We, you know, in our, and this is kind of a change, you know, because, you know, if I look back, we are progressing from the company which was always looking outside in hiring the executives. Now we are trying to grow executives from within. I worked in my company for almost 18 years now, but okay, I'm probably a rare example. So we focus on the talents. We want to identify the talents early enough in their career. We have you know, many opportunities actually to identify what we call a potential. We try to measure the potential. We try to identify early enough the potential of the people. By potential, we mainly distinguish agility. You know, we believe in agility, right? So it's not the professional knowledge, although professional knowledge, of course, is important, but professional knowledge you can learn. professional knowledge these days has a tendency of becoming obsolete because world is changing very fast. So professional knowledge is important, but what we think is more important is agility. Agility, you know what agility is. So it's a quite famous now. I mean, I think different companies understand it differently, but agility is basically a flexible mind, opportunity to find the most optimal decisions, and there is always a balance between, I think, perfectionism and result, and empathy and social skills. So basically it's agility and empathy and social skills which are the top probably in the list of the potential of our people. Growth capabilities, we try to develop a lot now internally. So capabilities of planning, capabilities of serving shoppers, supply chain capabilities. So we believe in internal institutions, in internal education, in internal trainings, and then thriving and engaged organization. So what does it mean? Well, we think that we have a luxury. We have a luxury of selling joy to people. Whenever I say what I do and what the company I work for, there is always typically a smile on the face, right? So I sell, when I present myself and I say that we're selling, cookies and chocolate, people typically like the idea, right? So this is a great asset which we want and we like to basically use and exploit. It's impossible to produce and sell good cookies and chocolate in the boring academical organization, right? So we try not to be the boring and academical place, but rather, life and exciting. Last but not least, talking about consumers, I mentioned a few things, right? So I mentioned Gen Z, and one of the major features of Gen Z is a fluidness, right? Is a speed of change. So basically, our future consumers, they will change their preferences. It will be very difficult to keep their loyalty. Then I mentioned about well-being. I mentioned about urban rights, and last but not least, I mentioned social responsibility. We believe that world, despite what is happening now politically, we believe that world is progressing towards more social responsible consumers. Because you guys, you will be more socially responsible than your predecessors. Believe it or not, right? So maybe you are not so responsible by attending this session, because I was expecting to see like 3 groups here. But I think it will come, right? So because there is something. So sustainability, it's a big thing. I am, talking to my students, and I hear a lot of skepticism sometimes when we talk about the ESG agenda and sustainability agenda. Why is it so, right? So there is an element of skepticism, and I think that's it's like a change curve, right? So the first when something new happens, and you have to accept the change, right? So basically, the first stage is rejection. So you don't believe that the change is for real. You don't believe that the change is for good, and you typically don't believe in the good intentions of any change. So the sustainability agenda and overall ESG agenda is a big change, is a big shift in the minds of corporations and also in the minds of consumers. That's why I think it's fair to say that up until now, for many people, ESG and sustainability is a fishy thing. Many people think, well, come on, it's not for real. Companies are not serious when they talk about ESG. They're pursuing some different interest. They are talking about, protecting environment, but they are not. Or there is a belief that, well, they do it because otherwise there is a risk of being cancelled from the business, from the society, by the investors. So what what I think should happen, right? So I think our company, as many other companies around the globe, we should demonstrate more sustainable achievements, right? So because so far, these are more declarations than the real achievements. And so, and I think that's our responsibility, to bring tangible achievements, to demonstrate to the consumers and to the world that, look, it's for real, and we didn't only talk about this, but we delivered a lot. And I think that will change the perception. But in our sustainability agenda, we focus on 4 major pillars. So we believe in the sustainable way of doing business, which means the right way, the true way, the honest way of doing the business. That's why we support and we focus in the upcoming years on 2 major things in sustainability, which is sourcing of raw materials, and we commit that 100% of cocoa and wheat flour, which we consume, and we buy a lot of cocoa, and we buy a lot of wheat. In some of the markets we buy wheat directly, the grains. In other markets we buy wheat flour. But basically, harvesting of cocoa beans is a complex and very disorganized process, because this is the responsibility for the farmers of West Africa, where education level, where the level of the agricultural culture is still very low. That's why they don't care about what will be left after them. They don't care. Sometimes they don't know how to care about better way to planting the trees and so on. So our responsibility is to educate. So we are investing millions of dollars every year in education programs, in support programs. So we're reaching out to thousands of farmers, basically leaving the money with them so that they can harvest, they can plant and harvest their cocoa trees in a better way, better than their parents and better than the many generations before them. Why do we do it? Why do we do it? Well, because we want to make sure that there will be enough of cocoa supply in the next years, right? And we believe that a good, wealthier, and better doing farmer is the best way to do it, right? So we invest without any return. We don't ask the money back from the farmers. There is no slavery, right? So, we give them money only on the condition that they will sell out cocoa beans only to us. No, there is no, it's unconditional. They can sell their beans to any company they want, any trader, right? So it's a one-way investment into more sustainable cocoa farming. We are the biggest contributor to cocoa farming communities across the globe. Second thing is wheat. This thing, this is far more advanced, of course. This business is far more advanced. But what do we mean by sustainable wheat harvesting? Is the way of harvesting? It's the quality of the grains. It's the quality of fertilizers, and basically the profile of the farmers themselves. So we invest in this, and we consciously choose not to procure wheat flour from the companies and farmers which do not satisfy our high requirements in terms of what fertilizers they use, what business model they follow, what agricultural practices they use on their fields, and so on. So simply because the growing of wheat is also quite CO2 consuming exercise. So we believe that if you do it in the right way, the CO2 emission can be 30–40% lower. So that's one of the KPIs, for example, which we track. So this is sustainability. First 2 priorities of sustainability. Another 2 where we have the direct impact is CO2 emission, overall carbon profile of our company into entire carbon situation around the globe, where we operate many plants, plus we procure a lot of soft commodities which are grown by the farmers, which are producing a lot of CO2 too. So what we put to ourselves is the target to reduce 50% of our total CO2 emission in 8 years, which is quite a lot, right? If you think about this, how can we do it? Well, there are a number of programs. What we actively do now. So, for example, we try to minimize the usage of gas, natural gas. We bake a lot of cookies, right? A lot of baked snacks. We believe that over the period of next few years, we have to switch from gas ovens to electrical ovens. We explore very actively the alternative ways to produce and generate the energy. We back to sustainable harvesting. We look at the way our suppliers produce commodities for us. We look at the transportation companies we work with, and so on and so forth. It's bloody difficult to calculate the entire carbon footprint. Bloody difficult. I think we progressed quite well. Today we can calculate our carbon footprint, and we already have quite a good agenda. How can we reduce the footprint by 50%? Yes?
What do you mean by sustainable harvesting?
By sustainable?
Harvesting.
Okay, I think I explained it. Let me tell once again. So basically, when we talk about growing wheat, so in a sustainable way, typically it's a complex of measures, right? So it is how good and advanced is overall agronomy, right? So how do they manage their fields so that they don't saturate too much the soil? Then the quality of the fertilizers they use, and the quantity and quality of fertilizers, the quality of the grains themselves, you know, the seeds. Because different seeds may produce different outcome, but we typically, it's unfair to say that we avoid GMO. It's impossible. You know, every wheat, almost every wheat which is harvested around the globe somehow is already genetically modified. So it's not, I'm not telling this, but this modification can be extreme or moderate, right? So we are in favor of moderate. Then it's about the usage of water, the usage of carbon, sorry, not the usage, but the carbon emission produced by these agricultural companies or farmers. So we have set of KPIs they have to comply. If they don't comply, we don't buy from them. You know, and typically to comply to this KPI, you have to be a bit more advanced, right? You have to have better equipment, you have to invest into your production. So it often comes with a cost to the farmers. But we believe it's the only way to run, you know, the agricultural business in a sustainable way. I don't know if it satisfies you, because you were looking for a very simple answer, but it's not. So it's compliance to the number of KPIs. So, carbon, ideally we want to be carbon neutral. Is it possible? Hypothetically, it is possible, believe it or not, but it's possible to be carbon neutral in producing food. Damn expensive yet. So, but overall, I think the cost of being carbon neutral is gradually going down. So probably in our next strategy, after 2030, we will put this strategy, you know, to be absolutely, to have a zero carbon emission as a result of our business operations. Packaging. Unfortunately, we're responsible for a big amount of packaging waste. So you probably saw the famous waste packaging islands in the Pacific Ocean. You know, so you saw this, right? So unfortunately, since we are selling snacks to the people, you know, it's a snacking business, which means that we sell our products individually wrapped in the packaging, right? We produce a lot of packaging. Our responsibility. What can we do about this? Well, at least, well, it's impossible to give up packaging, flexible packaging. Unfortunately, it's impossible to sell in bulk to you guys, because you consumers, you are active, living in urban lifestyle, you want to snack on the go, you're very, very careful and very demanding in terms of the quality of the product we serve you. Therefore, you require a good protection of the product. Impossible to avoid packaging. But what we can do, we can make all of our packaging recyclable. Because we believe that with the help of states around the globe, recyclability of packaging will be much bigger than it is today. Our part of the job is to make all of our packaging recyclable. The responsibility of you, consumers, household keepers, and the state, municipalities, is to collect all this packaging and send to recycle plants for future recyclability. That's why we already commit that 100% of our packaging should be recyclable. So we try to avoid plastic which is not recyclable. I think in 1 or 2 years, all of our packaging will be fully recyclable. And we try to invest in the programs, trying to increase the awareness of people, to the importance of sorting the garbage. We try to participate in the programs of our business partners, which are targeted to increase the amount of the actual recyclability in the markets we operate. Yes?
I have a question. So, the word recyclable, you mean biodegradable?
Yes. It means to be easily degradable and converted into packaging, right? So, or any other plastic. Yes. So, recyclable. So, we define recyclable. Not degradable. Not only. We define recyclability by easy process of being converted into plastic again. Because we believe that we should not produce any new plastic. There is enough plastic in the world to cover the needs of humanity for the next, 200 years.
So it's both basic.
Yeah, it's difficult. So I think I misunderstood your question. It's difficult to produce. How did you call it?
A bit provocative, but
yeah, but this is difficult to produce our packaging in a way that it's how do you call it?
Biodegradable.
Yeah, well, it's difficult, right? So to make our product, because our shelf lives are months. So typical shelf life of our product is from 6 to 9 months, because this is what you want. Of course, we follow consumer, because you want to find the product anywhere you go, right? So, and you want to consume it in different occasions. So it's difficult to make it degradable, but it's possible to make it fully recyclable, so that it can be recycled in order to produce the new packaging, right? So we want to basically, we claim that if you would start to collect the waste properly, and municipalities and the state would have the facilities to recycle this packaging, then we claim that there is no need in any new packaging to produce on planet Earth. There is enough of packaging already produced. If we just collect and recycle whatever is available, we have more than enough. Plus, we can produce other things, right? So we can produce packaging for other industries, or, whatever. Think about any plastic, right? So that's the whole idea. Not to use any more oil or gas to produce new packaging, but to use the existing packaging and recycle. So, I promised you I will not come back to the crisis. So as you may see, in our strategy, we are not referring to the current crisis. We are not referring to the current inflation. We are not referring to COVID, right? So it is more forward-looking strategy. Is it because, are we naive? Is it because we don't, we ignore what's happening on the world? No, we are not. And in our day-to-day operations, of course, we have to deal with a lot of issues. We believe that in a cyclical world, in a fluid world, it's better to be focused on the major trends, right? Like profile of consumer, importance of customer-centric supply chain, right? Sustainability agenda. This is more important strategically than the current turbulence of the world. That's why basically our strategy is maybe very hypothetical and very forward-looking, but we believe that's how the enterprise strategy should look like, right? So because we have enough of people who can sort out the current tactical operational matters, right? So, but without having a vision, there is a risk that all of these people will be in the swirl of a continuous crisis management, and overall, you know, we will degrade the value of the beautiful business we run. Any questions to what we have? Few words, you know, I brought the slide, few words about what we do in Russia these days. So I don't know if I have time. Do I have time more? Okay, if you're interested. Yeah, so few words about our business in Russia. And sorry again for this format. I don't know why it's presented this way. So we are a global company, international company, which cannot ignore what is happening these days. So and you know, it's difficult for the US corporation not to react to the current situation between two countries. So our company made a strategic current, you know, decision that we keep the presence in Russia. So we believe we have responsibility to our consumers, shoppers, customers, suppliers, and employees. We have responsibility because we provide food, we provide joy, we provide working places, we provide orders to our suppliers, working places to our employees. Therefore, driven by this responsibility, we continue our operations in Russia. However, we reduced the investment in TV media, so we basically stopped advertising. We stopped also both TV and digital media, although it's very painful, because back to my presentation, you know, we believe that actually the best way to grow the business and invest in the brands is to be very active in the media and to invest in the equity of the brand. But we stopped it. We stopped bringing new products, NPDs, like we call them, and we stopped driving very active, like we call them, tailor-made promotional activational program with the major key accounts, so, like we used to do. We used to run the big advertising campaigns and promotional campaigns with big retailers, with TV support and promotional support and so on. So from this, we focus on the store. So we basically, now 80% of our business is focused on the store execution. So we retain the footprint. So out of 230,000 stores in Russia, we present in 70–80% with our portfolio, and we actively present. So therefore, we go to these stores with our merchandisers, and we do active store management in roughly 80,000 stores. So within these stores, and this is the major stores where the major sales are happening. So within these stores, we believe in very basic but effective strategy. So we have to be visible, and we have to be visible through more points of contact, like we call them. So we put more displays now in the stores, for example, and we try to create whatever possible, so-called the brand blocks. So we put the products together on the shelf so that it creates a big and visible enough brand blocks, so that we can stop the shopper, so stopping power. We want to increase our visibility in the store, so to help the shopper to search for our product. Therefore, we target now to expand where possible our planograms, our listings, and also number of facings in the planograms. We believe that now, in this time, we have to ensure all time on-shelf availability. What does it mean? It means that if in every store of Peterочка, of 18,000 stores of Peterочка, if there should be 10 SKUs of Alpengold, they have to be there. So we believe into this, and we invest there, and we try to convince the shopper to buy us. We want to win with the shopper, therefore we we try value-added promo mechanics, and now we believe like never before in the product communication, right? So on-back communication. So this is back to basics in the way of doing business, like for company like us, right? So without advertising and without active communication direct to the consumer, only focused on the store execution. So, but it's our conscious choice. A bit different, as you may see, from the total strategy of the company. So, I hope you like this. So it reflects the topic of today's presentation, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. A single one.
Well, I have a question back to
Of course.
the part when you were comparing the
To any part, yeah. I mean,
Lenta and Petorочка.
yes.
So it says that the Petorочка are increasing. Yeah, you said that Petorочkas are increasing in Russia higher than Lenta because they are closer to homes usually. But isn't it important for a typical consumer that in Lenta usually the goods are in average cheaper than in Petorочка just because it's a bigger retail market space?
Well, first of all, they are not cheaper. Well,
Little bit, but yes.
well, the our retail is very much dominated by the promotions. So basically, in every category, you can buy the product at two prices: the base price, price without promo, and the promo price. And in some of the categories, you know, the amount of sale on promo is reaching 70, 80, 90%. So I can convince you that in majority of the categories, or majority of the products, Petorочка is able to provide the most attractive price. And if they are not, they are bloody unhappy. On the recent conference they actually run with their major suppliers, they put it as a typically #1 priority. They say, we want the best price in the market. We are the biggest, and we are growing, so we want the best price on the market. And if you cannot, dear supplier, dear Mr. Supplier, if you cannot provide the best price to us, which we can pass to whom? To our consumers and shoppers, then be ready to some severe measures against it. So, it may happen, right? So that occasionally the prices may be different, right? So, but overall, there is a dominance of promo prices, and these promo prices, first of all, they are very alike, but typically Petorочка is now winning in terms of the promo.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Sure. Yes.
You told that you stopped any digital activities such as promotion on TV, on social networks, but I guess there are some of your competitors who still running like this stage of awareness. And aren't you afraid to lose a number of your customers because you decide to give up these channels and just to focus on shelves and etc.?
Well, it's a fair question, right? So, well, first of all, we're not responsible for the decisions of our competitors. It's their choice. It's their conscious choice. But what matters for us is to be responsible for our own decisions, right? So if we made a decision to stop advertising, then we comply to this decision, right? And we try to compensate whatever possible. So it's like everything in business, right? So you have to be focused, and then you have to live the consequence of your decisions, right? So it's difficult in business to make the right decision. But in my view, you know, the decision is already good enough if it's made and it's respected and followed, right? So the consistency in following and sticking to your own word is very important. Are we concerned? Maybe. You know, but it's more important for us to follow our own commitments. Have a mic.
What is your favorite brand and favorite product in Mondelēz?
Well, I don't know. There are many. You know, I like Oreo. I like Oreo. I like Milka chocolate. I don't. Well, there is a great brand, Cadbury, which I don't like the taste, but I admire the brand because in every market where we have Cadbury, it has minimum 40% market share. So it is big in UK, and historically it was also big in all Commonwealth markets. So that's the perfect example of the brand, right? So it's modern chocolate, it's icon, you know, people love it, people are typically very much interested in what's happening with the brand. That's why when we acquired Cadbury, we faced a lot of negative feedback from the consumers, right? So because there was you know, Brits really took it very personally. You know, when US company acquired a legend, Cadbury, a UK brand, you know, a national icon, they were very much upset, and we faced quite a negative campaign, you know, which we had to resolve. But you know, there are many brands. I like Jubileena. It's a great product. You know, it's a very basic product, but you know, we are able to distribute and sell it 40,000 tons. So it's yeah. What I like about our brands that every successful brand is actually more than a product it is representing, right? So which allows us typically to charge a bit higher price than average of the market, right? So that's why you have brand for, right? To be able to deliver more value than just a product. So therefore, I think talking about CPG business, right? So it is the brand. The most important thing in any CPG business is the brand. You know, and what does the brand mean for the consumer, right? So does it match the consumer preferences? What kind of value it brings? So, and there is no limit, in my view. You know, talking in the spirit of marketing, I think there is no limit to increase the value you bring to consumer. There is no limit. And the art of marketing is always to bring more and more value to consumers, which is not always the case, right? So when there is not enough of value brought to the consumer, the brand is becoming, you know, very much elastic to the price and loses the consumer loyalty. Therefore, you know, in the business, in CPG, but I believe in other businesses as well, right? The greatest asset is the brand.
Thank you.
No questions?
Okay. We have attraction. Good.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yes.
I'm interested in the ways that you use for understanding your customers. Do you use any like neuromarketing research or I don't know, interviews with focus groups, or you just adjust the number of for goods sold and you know, do your conclusions based on it?
So, okay, if I understood your question right, so how do we understand the consumers, right? So what do we do to understand the consumer preferences? Well, I think it's never enough, right? So, but so first of all, we have a special department which is called Consumer Insight. It is typically within the marketing, right? But they are not marketeers. They are sociologists, if you wish, right? So because they look at consumers through the scientific lens, right? So we typically acquire a lot of data. You know, in the markets where we play, we buy the retail data, retail sales, you know, retail audit, or directly from the customers. But by buying retail data, you know, we understand the number of transactions, right? So we don't understand exactly the profile of consumer. These days, you know, majority of the customers in retail, shoppers, they have loyalty cards. That's why it's possible to buy the data and understand the profile of the shopper by partnering with key accounts. For online sales, again, the marketplaces are also able to provide you the profile of the shopper. So there is a lot of data there, but the trick is that by understanding the data from the retailers, and they are really crazy about this. Now every retailer is promoting this this data which they have, because they try to have 100% coverage of all of their transactions with the help of loyalty cards, right? So, and they generate immense amount of data. So every retailer now has a department of a big data, because they have, trillions of, whatever, megabytes or gigabytes of the data from their loyalty cards. They don't know what to do with it, and they try to analyze it and sell it back to the producers. But the trick is that it's the data of shoppers. So therefore, in parallel to this data, we try to buy the household panel data. This is more interesting. So there are companies which are which are partnering with households, and they create big enough panels. So of tens of thousands of households, and their panelists, these households which are included in their panels, they provide a very detailed reports on what do they buy, what do they consume, so what is the typical rotation of the products in the daily or weekly basket of consumption of the families. So this household data is very, very important. And of course, we run the focus groups. A lot of consumer data is available through digital commerce. And the beauty of digital advertising is that it's a two-way communication. When you place your advertising on digital, what you can get back, when you put it on TV, it's a one-way communication. You don't know who's watching TV. There are these agencies who implant some strange things in the TVs of people, or who call people, during different time, and they try to question the TV viewers about what channel do they watch. This is old school technique, right? So, but this data is not representative. So, therefore, whenever you're on TV, you don't know who's watching you. And there is a lot of discrepancy in the data which is provided by media houses to you. When you're on digital, you can get the profile of your consumers, of people who actually was interested and who watched your media, and this is very important. So basically, these are the major sources of data, right? So retail audit, consumer household panels, a lot of data from digital, data from loyalty cards of retailers, focus groups, and of course, there are plenty army of consultants who are happy to sell you, their ideas, their researches. So a lot of data. We process a lot of data, and we try to crystallize from this data something meaningful, right? So for our brands. So therefore, typically for every brand on every market, we try to understand, the target consumer, the preferences, right? So that's a must-have, right? So for every brand on every market, it's a must-have thing to understand the consumer and to understand based on the data available. Sorry for one answer.
I had a technical question. Since March, has it been have there been any changes in payment of dividends to your company's headquarters in the US?
No. Let me clarify. So can you be specific in payments of dividends to
the shareholder, mainly the major owner in the US?
Okay. It's indeed a technical question. Well, it's not a secret, right? we are a Russian legal entity. So we operate in Russia as a standalone legal entity. Therefore, we are a corporate citizen, and we belong to the shareholder, which belongs to the final corporation, right? So, in the end of the day, we are part of U.S. corporation. Therefore, our ultimate controlling shareholder is a U.S. entity. Since not March, but beginning of May, there is indeed a technical restriction on ability of Russian legal entities to pay dividends, to distribute dividends in favor of shareholders if this shareholder is registered in US or Europe, you know, the pool of what we know as unfriendly states. Yeah, it's a legal act which we have to respect. There is a process of getting an exception, and each case is reviewed separately by the Special Governmental Commission. So there is a special protocol which enables on case-by-case basis distribution of dividends, but it has to be approved by this Special Governmental Commission. Yeah, and it's not a secret, it's a public it's a public news. Yeah. Okay, so, okay, thank you guys. So, it was a pleasure. I hope it was useful. Keep on buying Oreos, of course, and, you know, and in your future endeavors, right? So, it was not about to promote our company, right? So, but my main purpose was to probably provide you, you know, one of the examples of what strategy means, right? So, you know, and how it is important, you know, and whether the current environment, you know, and of this volatility can impact, you know, the strategic choices and strategic thinking of corporations like mine. Thank you.
Well, let me say thank you so much to Alexei, and maybe we have another master class. You promised.
Yeah.
Somewhere, yes, in March or April, but it will be more about, as I understand, corporate finance.
Yes.
You said you
Yes.
will have, you will have a completely different approach. But what is interesting today, as a vice president of finance, you see, Alexei talks about marketing. So it's not a surprising thing. And that's why we always say that you should receive multidisciplinary knowledge, and you actually use this multidisciplinary knowledge at work. We cannot say that specialists in finance should not be savvy in marketing and vice versa, because you never know what you will have to face. Yes, in the company. So you will have to deal with all these issues altogether. Thank you so much for coming today, and I'm really upset that the audience is just not less than half full. But there are students, I was actually informed there were 29 students online, so altogether we have. Yes, we have more than one group. If there are no more questions, I hope that this information was quite valuable. And I want to say that Alexei, this year was quite busy. That's why we had actually to change our schedule, and Alexei will not teach international corporate finance. There is one lady, Olga Guseva. You had, yes, the first class with her, but previously Alexei taught 2 groups, and Olga, yes, took only 1 group. This year, since a very complicated situation and lack of time, Alexei agreed only to teach course International Finance Advanced on the second year of study. So those who are interested in financial issues, more than in marketing or together with marketing, so you can definitely attend Alexei's class next year. It's not an easy class, let's say that, but for those who want to learn more about finance, I would definitely recommend it. So thank you very much one more time. I see there are always second-year students here. Thank you for coming. We did not invite you.
These are my fans.
Just by a special email, but I made it personally. I just invited all the students from my international entrepreneurship class. And may I ask one more question? Do you have anything interesting in your company regarding intrapreneurship? No?
What do you mean by interesting? So maybe if you can be a bit more specific.
Something that probably is worth sharing with us, because you mentioned that a very interesting corporate culture exists in Mondelēz International, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you know anything about entrepreneurship or intra-company entrepreneurship, that maybe there are groups of people, teams of people.
Yeah, well, what we used to say, I think it was even one of the corporate priorities or values, you know, we wanted to boost the entrepreneurial approach, you know, we used this, you know, like in solution to different situations, you know, we were trying to boost this, right? So, and I think the idea was, instead of following the patterns, because we're a big company, every big company has to have a very strong corporate governance structure, right? So, but one thing is to have a strong corporate governance structure, which is basically a set of rules, controls, processes, you know, which everybody has to adhere to, right? So, but it should not overall dominate the culture and the processes and the decision making, you know. So what we fostered for a period of time was to never compromise with compliance, so which means to respect all the rules and processes we have in the company, but at the same time we fostered the culture of being entrepreneurial in the way we run the business, right? So which means to try to always bring some unconventional solutions, not to be afraid to experiment, to offer something new on the market or a new promotional technique with the customer. So not to be afraid of experiment. We found a bit different word to this, right? So we don't say entrepreneurial culture. I think today we say, I think we put it under the umbrella of agile. I think that's how we understand now agile, because I think in the way we understand agile, I think 50 or 70% is entrepreneurial, right? So because, I mean, one of the main, I think, characteristic of a good entrepreneur is agility and unconventional thinking, right? So that's the difference between entrepreneur and a manager. You know, a manager is a good administrator, but it's never good enough to be a good administrator in the business, right? So it's very reliable, you know, you can build the best process in the world, but it will not necessarily create the most value. So that's, therefore, yes, we put a lot of emphasis on this, and we try to now solve more and more projects and questions by creating these small agile teams, right? So we follow this approach. And we foster and support unconventional thinking, approach, and experiment. You know, so which is, I think, very close to what you meant.
Thank you very much. Yes. Well, then I believe the master class is over.
Thank you.
Thank you very much again.